I'm Mitchell Schlitt, captain of F.R.S.T Team 1714, and this is F.R.S.T Game Strategy and Strategic Design. Before you click to the next slide, a lot of people wonder what's so important about strategy. I mean, it's a ball carrying game. You grab balls off the ground, you shoot them into a goal. It can't be much more complicated than that. Actually, it really is. If you want to build a good robot and do good at competitions, you need to be very good at strategy and strategic design. Next. Okay, I know you saw us probably in our last presentation, but 1714's perpetual goal. Get to Einstein, world finals field. That's always our goal, and it's a good goal to have. Next. Alright, so how do you win a match? So you have to score more. I put more, like the more robotics thing, just because it's a funny joke. You have to score more points than the opposing alliance. So, in strategy, you have to determine how you will score more points or prevent the opponents from scoring more than you. By the way, most games are based on offense that wins most of the matches, not defense. So keep that in mind. Next slide. Generally, there are 3 ways to score. Autonomous, either 10 or 15 seconds about at the beginning of the match, where computer controlled, it just drives the robot around autonomously and it scores points, no drivers touching the controls at all. Teleoperated, about 2 minutes of driver controlled robots, so the drivers just drive around and do whatever they want. And finally, the end game is generally during the last part of the game with a new way to score. Last year, 2014, for all you returning sophomores, there was no end game last year, which was weird, but it is very possible there will be an end game next year. Autonomous and the end game normally have very, very, very high points scored per second. I believe me and my dad did a calculation back in 2012, and we scored, I think, 4 times more points per second in autonomous than you did during teleop. If the cheesy proofs, I know you saw in Justin's presentation, they had a 3-ball autonomous. If they scored the same amount of points per game as they did in autonomous, they'd score almost 900 points. The highest score of the whole year was, I believe, 380. So you score a lot of points in autonomous. Next slide. Alright, so step number 1 is understanding all of the rules on how points can be scored. So you pretty much have to understand every little way on how you can score points. Just because you can shoot a basketball into a hoop doesn't mean that's the only way you can do it. A lot of years there are secret little ways, but I'll get to that later. You will also have to understand how penalties affect points. If you touch a robot in a safe zone, is it a 1-point penalty or is it a 10-point penalty? That makes a huge difference when deciding what to do during a match. If they're trying to shoot a 2-point ball and it's only a 1-point penalty for me to go make them miss, clearly it's worth it. But if it's a 10-point penalty, clearly it's not. So just always have to keep that in mind. Next slide. Step number 2. Determine if a chokehold strategy is present. A chokehold strategy is a strategy where you can do the same exact thing every single time and win all matches. So to do this, you have to use math, not intuition. You have to prove it with the numbers that your strategy can continuously win. The best example of this was Team 71 in 2002. In 2002, there were 3 goals just rolling cart carriages with PVC pipes as walls on the side. There are 3 of those lined up in the center of the field, and the 2 alliances on each side. There were also a bunch of balls on the side of the field. So you could score points by grabbing the balls in, you can see they're like yellow balls, and just putting them in the goals. So I believe you got either 1 or 2 points for that, and then you got 30 points for having all the goals in your zone. If you can see by the tape lines, there were 6 zones. It was red, blue, so that's how it was. But the only way the balls counted as points is if the goal was in your zone. So what happens if you have all 3 goals in your zone? Can the alliance score any other points? Not really. So pretty much it's 90 plus whatever balls you have into 0 every game. So their robot at the beginning of the match was the fastest robot of its day, back 12 years ago. So it went like 10 feet per second, which was really fast for 2002. So it would sprint down the field to the middle, deploy 2 arms, it would grab 1 goal in the front, and grab 2 other goals on the side, and it would pretty much always do that. After that, it converted from a driving robot into a walking robot. This was back when you could stick, it was more lenient with rules on what you could stick in the carpet. So they had metal files they stuck in the carpet, and their robot slowly walked and carried the goals across the field. It was essentially unstoppable and unbeatable. They actually went up against another robot that had the exact same strategy, but they had spiked wheels instead of their fantastic walking machine. They ripped the carpet, but they still won the match. They did, however, lose several matches, mostly because one robot eventually saw this coming, and at a regional, they designed the robot with the sole intent of being faster than this team and beat them to the goals. After that, they were rarely ever beaten and won the world championship. Next slide. Step 3. There are 2 general paths you can take after determining all of this. You can try to win all the qualification matches, which is generally the strategy we go with, or try to have the robot that is most capable to play in the elimination matches. And most of the time, these 2 points are the same thing. So, the robot, so let's just go to the next slide. It'll explain it. Okay, so if you win the qualification matches and seed high, you get to pick your own alliance, which is good. So, pretty much you need to have a lot of score and autonomous. You have to just score points every chance you get, because you're pretty much going to have to be the powerhouse machine on your alliance, because you have no idea what your partner's going to do. So every single match, you have to put up ridiculous amounts of points. So it is helpful to have multiple ways to score, especially because, again, you don't know what your partners are going to do in qualifications. They're randomly selected, and so you should have a backup plan. Or you should just do the same thing over and over again, as long as no one can stop you. Or at least it's very, very difficult to stop you. So let's go to the next slide. Or you can prep for the eliminations. You have to figure out how to score the most points under defense. And this is very critical when in elimination matches, when heavier defense is typically played. You have to work with other high-scoring robots on your alliance, because if your robot's good, you're probably going to get quicked by another good team, and then you're going to have to figure out how to share the workload, generally. This is very true with games with few scoring elements. A good example is this, I'll go back to the last slide, is this slide. This was breakaway. Pretty much you kick soccer balls and goals, and at the end of the match you could hang. Robots that could hang had a huge advantage over robots that couldn't hang in the elimination matches, because they could guarantee 2 points automatically, pretty much, and they did not have to worry about where you played or the soccer balls, because there are a limited number of soccer balls on the field. Let's go to the next slide. One of my favorite robots of all time is Tumbleweed, for this exact reason. The game was 2008 Overdrive. You can kind of see the field in the corner. You had to race around the field, and you had to carry the 2 gigantic track balls. They're very big. If you've seen 2014, double the size, and that's how big they were. So you pretty much got points for moving the track balls around the field, passing them over the hurdle, and finally just making laps around like a NASCAR track. So what do you do on your alliance when there's 3 robots and there's only 2 game elements to do to move around? What does the 3rd robot do? Well, on most alliances, they would have robots they would just switch off between 3 robots. But this team, which is generally a very, very good team, they decided, nah, we're going to probably get picked by 2 other good robots that can move the track balls around well. So we should focus on scoring points in whatever way works for us best. So all they did was build a little swerve robot, and they ran around the field as quick as possible. So it worked very well. They got picked at several events, including the World Championship, by 2 of the highest scoring robots in the world, and they set many records of points, consistently going very high. And they would not have helped their alliance much at all if they were just a regular trackball robot. So let's go on to the next slide. More strategy tips. I didn't put more as all capital. Okay, you should always figure out how to work well with other robots, being versatile. On left we have 987s, all robot. It was frisbee game where you had frisbees and 3 robots started by shooting frisbees in a very high goal in the front of the field during autonomous. But because of the turret they have on the robot, they could pretty much line the robot up wherever. They also had a ground pickup, so pretty much any robot, any combinations of robots, they could do an autonomous and they could score a lot of points just because they had so many that worked good. This was really good for qualifications where they just scored lots of points in autonomous, which goes back to another point I made earlier. Another way to do it is control the game elements. This is very good in games that don't have a lot of elements. So a favorite example is Team 16 back in Rebound Rumble. I know this is one of the years, this is my second year, and we actually had to play against this team in the finals of the Galileo matches, and this was very cool to see firsthand. Their robot on the field that year was 18 balls. That's it. And each human player, between 3 human players on each side, you could hold 6 balls. So now 12 balls are already taken off the field. So it is possible that you could starve the whole field down to 6 balls. If you have 2 good shooting robots and you need to pick a third robot, what do you want to do? Well, 2 smart teams decided, let's pick a robot that'll go grab the balls off the other side of the field, bring them over to our side, so that we always have balls to shoot in the high goal, while the other side does not. This is the strategy that allowed this alliance to beat everyone pretty much without a problem. And they also won a world championship with this alliance single-handedly. It was very effective, and it pretty much led to their team scored lots of points because they had all the balls. Other alliances did not score a lot of points because they did not have any balls. Let's go to the next slide. Implementing strategy and design. Strategy helps us determine what we are going to do, which is all good and dandy, but strategic design is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it with our strategy. So the 3 golden rules of strategic design is make it simple, robust, and reliable. I changed the slide up from last year from 1503's Simple 2 robot, if you remember that from last year, to 973's Off-Season robot. This was also the disc shooting game from last year. And this robot essentially was just, it drives right up to the side of the field, you load discs in it, and it drives back to the pyramid, which was the protected scoring zone, and shot frisbees in the high goal. Really simple. A lot of teams did this. But they did one thing differently. They used all Omni wheels on their robot, which very few teams have ever done, so they would just slide around the field. So anytime a defender came to block them, they would literally just spin out like spinning on a piece of butter, regolith, bad pun. But they could just absolutely avoid defense. So what they did was they built their super simple robot, they got good driver training. Literally, I bet all of the top 200 best teams could build this in less than 3 weeks. So what they did was, you see that equation down at the bottom? They made 7 runs of 4 discs each. Each disc was worth 3 points. They shot 4 discs in autonomous, and they scored 10 points buying at the end of the match. This is their average score, 112 points, which is a lot more than climbing the pyramid, which got us 50 points. So this simple robot put up a gigantic amount of numbers. It beat this thing, which was the highest scoring robot in the world, which could pick up discs off the ground, shoot 7 autonomous, hang. That robot scored more on the top, little plywood bot. Next slide. We should not be afraid to try something crazy within reason. What you see here is just a compilation of some of the crazier designs, some of which work, some of which don't. But they are all very valid designs and led to some very, very good robots. 2 of the robots up here made it to Einstein, and one of them was a world championship. So some very crazy good ideas have done very well in the past. Next slide. Ultimate Ascent. This is where I'll begin an analysis of the last 2 years. So our strategy for Ultimate Ascent was to score 50 points in the match, climb the pyramid, dump the discs. That'll get us 50 points every match, and that'll be an assumption that we will score at least 1/3 of our alliance's points every single match. So it seems like a good strategy. Let's go to the next page. So at the Lake Superior Regional, in qualification matches, no alliance ever scored 150 points. So we would have contributed at least 1/3 of the points every single match. Actually, we would have won 52 of the 84 qualification matches without two robots even coming to the field. So it would have been a very good strategy. During the elimination matches, 150 points was scored once. A grand total of once in all the elimination matches. So we would have put up at least our fair share of the points all but once. So the strategy would have worked very well, but the execution lacked because we were not ready to climb at the Lake Superior Regional. Let's go to the next page. The World Championship. In the qualification matches at the World Championship back in 2013, 150 points was scored 45 times out of 268 alliance scores. So pretty much a small percentage of the time they scored 150 points. But in the elimination matches, out of the 16 matches played, that means 32 alliance scores, 150 points was scored 29 times out of the 32. So we would have not put up the necessary amount of points to cover our 33%, and our strategy would not have worked. Why? Because we did not predict how many discs would be scored at the highest level of competition. There are several matches where actually more than 200 points were scored, which we have not contributed our fair share of points to. Let's go to the next slide. Aerial assist last year. Many of you will recognize this robot. Our strategy last year was to score 2 balls in the autonomous. It'll give us the early lead by we'll score 45 points alone, and then we'll take the ball from the partners to either shoot it over the truss or shoot it into the high goal at the end of the cycle. Next slide. At the Wisconsin Regional, the strategy worked really good in qualifications, although we were ranked 22nd. Our alliances on average scored 122.5 points a match. The average alliance score I'm not counting the matches we were in, that was 97 points. So our alliances scored a lot more than the average alliance. In the elimination matches, our partners missed their auto shots. They only made 3 out of 6 auto shots during the quarterfinals. Our autonomouses, we made all of them. So our strategy was great. Our implementation was pretty good, but we just had poor luck, which, that happens sometimes. Next slide. Finally, at the World Championship, the strategy did not change at all, but we did find out we had another problem with ball control not being great. Alright, in a second you're going to click the video, Darren, it'll just play for like 5 seconds.
This one?
Yeah. Wait. Is it working?
I have no idea. You made this. Click it again?
Yeah, it should just work. Okay, pretty much it's a 5-second long GIF of another robot running into us and the ball just falling. So our strategy was still pretty good, but execution was not able to succeed at the highest level of competition. Next slide, Gary. Okay, any questions on this? About strategy, strategic design? In 2012, we had an excellent strategy. Our execution was very good. We were 1 match away from going to Einstein. That's all the farther we were. When you have a good strategy, a good robot build, and a good drive team, you will do very well. Next slide. So, for robotics, good luck to all the other teams this year, and have fun with strategy.